Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Good evening, ma'am. Yes, you are audible.
Okay, okay. Screen is visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. I am Himanshu, PSS scholar from IIT Bombay. So, today we'll discuss about your week 10 tutorial class from this immunology course, and mostly we'll discuss about like hypersensitivity and all those like what is this and what how many types of hypersensitivity and the questions on the cytokine receptors, how many types of cytokine receptors are there, right? So moving to the first question, interferon receptors belong to which class of cytokine receptor? Option A is class 1, option B is class 2, option C is TNF, and option D is immunoglobulin. Option B, or someone saying something? Okay, let's see. I think so. Option B is the right answer for this question. So basically, cytokine receptor, we know that what are the cytokines? These are the small molecular weight proteins which are present on the cells. So that's why we call it a cytokine receptor, where this cytokines binds. Cytokine, which are the low molecular weight proteins, which bind to that surface of some receptor. So where the cytokine bind, we call this receptors called this cytokine receptor. So we divided it into the different type, and basically there are five types of this cytokine receptors. This immunoglobulin superfamily receptor, hematopoietin, chemokine receptors, interferon receptors, and TNF receptors. So this class 1 cytokine receptors, also known this hematopoietin receptor. So inside this class 1, only the interleukins and this colony stimulating factors will bind. So they'll act as a binding ligand to this class 1 cytokine receptors. Right. So next is class 2. Class 2 cytokine receptors are primarily these are receptor for the interferons. So these are the receptor where this interferon will come and bind, and some interleukins also like IL-10 family members, they'll also bind to the class 2. Other IL family members, other interleukin family members, they'll bind to the class 1 cytokine receptors. Only this IL-10 family and interferon ligands, they will bind to the class 2 cytokine receptors. And in the question also they mentioned that interferon belong to which class of cytokine receptors. So here we can see that this belongs to the class 2 cytokine receptors. Next is tumor necrosis factors. As the name also suggests, TNF. So it recognizes the ligands from the TNF family. And then immunoglobulin superfamily receptors, because they share a immunoglobulin like domain, that is antibody like domains, and it's involved in the various binding of the ligands, including some cytokine also. Next is chemokine. We already discussed in the last class also. These are the G protein coupled receptors which span 7 times across the membranes. So that's why we call it as 7 G protein coupled receptors also. They binds mostly the chemokines, and we took the example of here this HIV entry also, and here we see that CXCR4 and CCR5 interactions with the receptors. CXCL12, normally this happens with the CXCL12's chemokine receptors, right? So here also this is the immunoglobulin superfamily receptor. This one is the class 1 hematopoietin receptors, and then the interferons family receptors comes to the class 2 receptors, and then the class 3, not class 3, then TNF receptors, and after that's immunoglobulin, and then last is the chemokine receptors. So these are the five receptors. So hematopoietin we called it as class 1, and interferon receptors family we call it as class 2. So in the question it mentioned that interferon receptors belongs to which class? Class 2 cytokine family receptors. And in case of hematopoietin, these GM-CSF and this all the interleukins belong to this class 1, that is hematopoietin receptors. Only the interleukin 10 and the interferons they belong to the class 2. Other than that, these are the simple. The TNF receptors belongs to the TNF family, chemokines belongs to the chemokines, and or G protein coupled receptors, and immunoglobulin which have a like same domain with the immunoglobulin. So moving to the next question, GM-CSF, that is granulocyte macrophage CSF colony stimulating factor subfamily of cytokine receptors belong to which class of cytokine receptor? Option A is class 1, option B is immunoglobulin, option C is GPCR, and option D is all of the above.
Option 1.
Okay, you are right, very good. The class 1, and we also called it as hematopoietin receptors. So this is the right answer for this question. Here we can see that this class 1 cytokine receptors been mentioned in the previous slide, also called as hematopoietin receptor families. They recognize many of the interleukins, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the interleukin, except this interleukin 10 that belongs, this interleukin 10 belongs to this class 2 cytokine. Also, they have recognized this other CSF factors, other colony stimulating factor, that is GM-CSF, GCSF, and MCSF. And we know that these GM-CSF belong to which? This class 1, right? They are so what are the characteristic feature of this class 1 cytokine receptors is they have this conserved motifs WSXWS sequence in their extracellular domains. So because of that, this class 1 cytokine is different from this class 2. And class 2 we already discussed that they recognize the interferon and interleukin 10. Immunoglobulin also we discussed that help, they have a same domain like a immunoglobulin antibody like, and mostly these domains help in the cell adhesion and also with the antigen recognition. So they help in this two main functions. And the class G, and other than that, this GPCRs, which is a chemokine signaling, so this chemokine, all the chemokines belongs to this GPCRs receptors. So in the question they asked this GM-CSF, and as we know that this belong to the class 1 cytokine, that is hematopoietin receptor family. So all the interleukins and this GM-CSF, GCSF, and MCSF belongs to this class 1 cytokine receptor family. So it's easy. So moving to the next question, which of the following amino acid is conserved? So we saw that in class 1, this is the sequence which is conserved in class 1 WSXWS. But here in the question, they mention that only one amino acid we have to know that is conserved in both. That is conserved in class 1 as well as in the class 2 family of the cytokine receptor family. So option A is valine, option B is proline, option C is cysteine, and option D is alanine.
Option C.
Okay, so let's see. So very good. You are right that the cysteine is the conserved amino acid which is conserved in both the receptor family. That is class 1 hematopoietin receptor and class 2 which is the interferon receptors family. So they have this conserved cysteine residue in their extracellular domain. So this is they are the two domain, so which is present outside the cytoplasm. that is known as extracellular domain, and which is inside we call it as intracellular domain. So outside of this cytoplasm, this extracellular domain, they have this cysteine residue which is present in both the class 1 as well as in the class 2. So both have this cysteine. These cysteine, we know that cysteine and cysteine, they form this EIN cysteine, that is form this disulfide bond. These disulfide bond, they stabilize the receptors 3D structures. We know that these class 1 receptor, as we already discussed, that they have this characteristics WSX WS motif. In addition to this cysteine, they have this motif. We already discussed that these is the characteristic feature that distinguish this class 1 and class 2 receptors, because both have the same structures, both class 1 and class 2. But these class 2 receptors, they don't have this motif, WSXWS motif. Other than that, mostly these receptors are same. They have the cysteine, conserved cysteine amino acids. But these class 2 receptors, they lack this WSX WS motif, which is a characteristic feature of class 1 receptors, but they have still preserved this cysteine residue which form this disulfide bonds, which is present in class 1 receptors also. So that's the amino acid which is conserved in both is this cysteine residue. Other than that, these motif is present, that is tryptophan, serine, X tryptophan, serine. This is present in class 1 receptors only. So here we can see that the structures of this, these are the conserved cysteine. We can see that these which form this disulfide bond. Here we can see that this is present in the this type 2 cytokine also, and this intercellular domain is also like most of this is the similar like the type 1 cytokine receptors. But in case of type 2 receptors, we can see that this sequence is missing, this WSXWS, which is a characteristic feature of this type 1 cytokine receptors only. It is not present in this type 2 cytokine receptors. They have this conserved cysteine which is present in both type 1 as well as this type 2, right? And this is present in the extracellular domain, right? They are not asking about the intracellular domain, like what is the difference between intracellular domain. Here in extracellular domain, all other structures are similar except this WSX. Other than that, they have the common conserved system is there, right? So moving to the next question, which of the following events is required for licensing of dendritic cells? Option A is insulin receptor interaction. Option B is CXCR7 CCL21 interaction. Option C is G protein GPCR interaction. And option D is all of the above. Any guesses?
Option B.
Okay, you are right. Very good. This CXCR7 CCL21 interaction, this is very important event in licensing of this dendritic cells. We know that what are these dendritic cells? These are the APCs, that is antigen presenting cells, which present the antigens to our body that it is a foreign materials. It can damage our body. So to eliminate that, we have to need for this licensing. So they have to undergo a process called licensing so that they can become this fully functional APCs, right? That is mature. So what happened during this licensing, it involves there are the two events which come under this licensing. First one is these dendritic cells, these are the peripheral tissue, and here is a lymph node. So the first event is there is a migration of this dendritic cells which normally present in the peripheral tissue, they come to the lymph node. After that, these, because they have to show the peptides to the T cells, and after that activations will be there, right? So there is a co-stimulatory molecule, that is CD80 and 86. There is upregulation of these events which help in the maturation and also help in the peptide recognitions, right? So they upregulate this co-stimulatory molecules, that is CD80, CD86 and CD40. After that, they'll interact with the helper T cells so that they can activate those T cells, right? And how they will activate, how they'll activate this T cells by the CD40-40L ligand signaling. So these are the three main event, not two. These are the three main event which come under the licensing. First is migration of these dendritic cells from peripheral to lymph nodes. After that, there will be upregulation of this co-stimulatory molecules, that is CD80, 86, and CD40, and after that they'll interact with the helper T cells by the CD40 and CD40L signaling so that they can activate this naive T cells to the mature T cells. So during this critical step in this licensing, during this first step, which is a first main step that will decide the features of this further signaling, right? So during this migration, these dendritic cells migration from this peripheral tissue to lymph node, they will mediate by the chemokine receptor ligand interactions. How it happens is this CCR7 bind to this CCL19 and CCL21. Once it will bind to this receptor will bind to this ligands, they guide this dendritic cells into the lymphoid tissue. After that only it will move to the lymphoid tissue. Sometime, uh, this is extra information that sometimes this CXCR7 is also helping. Like other than CCR7, CXCR7 is also another receptors which bind to this CCL19 and CCL21 and help this dendritic cell into the lymphoid tissue. So these interaction is very important. CXCR7 or CCR7 or CCL21 or CCL19. So these are the interaction which is very important for the licensing of dendritic cells. The first step of the licensing, where the dendritic cells move from the peripheral tissue to lymph node through the chemokine receptors and ligand interactions. As we know that insulin receptor interaction, no, this will be not the right answer, because we know that insulin is anywhere, it will not come under this dendritic cell licensing. They help in the metabolism, we know that glucose metabolism and all, there the insulin receptor will play the role and help in the glucose metabolism. Then G protein GPCR interaction, it is also not a it's a general signaling mechanism, not as specific, that help in the licensing. So other option, the remaining option is the CXCR7 CCL21. So this is the interaction which is a very important event required for this licensing of this dendritic cells, that is APCs. So here is a diagram, the same, which shows the interaction of this CCR7 and CXCR5. After that, so this we can see that peripheral tissue is there. Here the pre-disease, like premature dendritic cells is there. Once this interaction will happen, this CCR7 and the CCXCL, after that, this afferent lymph node, after the interaction with the CCL19 and CCL21, here we can see that this is the afferent lymph vessels, and here the CCL19 and CCL21 will be there. That after that interaction, it will go into this lymph node. We can see that this will bind with the T helper cells, and they'll move to this lymph nodes, right? So these interaction is very important. The same thing, that how it will move and then help in the. So moving to the next question, the stacked dimers along with the IRF binds to which of the following DNA elements and upregulates the interferon stimulated genes? Option A is interferon sensitive response elements. Option B is drought response elements. Option C is heat shock response elements. Option D is cold response elements. Any guesses?
Option A.
Okay, interferon sensitive response element. So you are right, very good. So what is this STAT dimer is? So basically this STAT dimer, it's a pair of signal transducer, S is signal transducer, and activator of transcription. So these are the proteins. They join together, STAT dimer, that two starts, they'll form one dimers, and after that they'll form a stable complex. And these dimerization mostly happen once there are some tyrosine residues will be there on these receptors. Once this residue will be phosphorylation, then it will come and form this dimerization. After that, this stat will move from, like, it will translocate, it will from the cytoplasm, it will translocate to the nucleus, and it will activate some other genes which help in the signaling. So basically this cytokine and all, they'll help. So when the cells, any cells detect this foreign materials, DNA or viral infection, these interferons mostly, they activates this JAK-STAT signaling pathway. So how it will help? So mostly during the viral infection, this interferon sensitive response element, they only, like, this is the main signaling, like, all the signaling are not happening like across the various tissues and across all the pathways. So one pathway may be the very main pathway for any signaling, like any signaling pathways mean for one kind of molecule. So these interferon stimulated genes mostly, these will upregulate with this JAK-STAT pathway only, right? So here this interferon will activates this JAK-STAT. So this, once this interferon will bind to this STAT receptors, they activate this STAT proteins. So what happen is interferon binds with this receptors and they activates this JAK kinase. So this JAK phospholites these STAT proteins, and where it phospholites, in the tyrosine residue, of which is present like inside the, like, which is an intracellular domain. So here the tyrosine residue, they'll phospholize this STAT protein, that is signal transducer and activator of transcription. So after that, this STAT will form the dimerize, will form the dimer. They'll start dimerization. This STAT1 and STAT2 will come close, and they'll associate with this interferon regulatory factor 9. Here, mostly this interferon, which factor? This regulatory factor 9, and they'll form this complex ISHF3. After that, it will go to the nucleus, as I earlier mentioned, and they'll binds with the interferon stimulated response elements, which is this interferon sensitive response element or stimulated response elements in the DNA. So they upregulates this interferon stimulated genes which encode the antiviral proteins. So the other options, we know that drought response, this is drought response, we don't have these elements. Mostly they come under this plant stress signaling. Heat shock, as the name suggests, it regulates the heat shock proteins, HSPs and all. Cold response elements, these help in the cold adaptations. So these, all these three options we can eliminate easily, because we know that drought will not come under us, it will help in the plant and all. Heat shock help in the heat shock proteins, and the cold response help in the cold adaptations. So only the STAT dimerization and the interferon help in this upregulation with these elements, interferon sensitive response element. So moving to the next question, oligomerized MXGTPases can trap and degrade the viral particles by binding to the. Option A is viral DNA. Option B is viral nucleocapsid. Option C is viral RNA. And option D is none of the above. Any guesses? Sorry. What do you think? That the oligomerized GTPases can trap and degrade the viral particles by binding to. Option A is this viral DNA and this viral nucleocapsid, and option C is viral RNA, and then option D is none of the above.
Option B.
Okay. Anyone else? Very good, you are right. Option B is the right answer for this question. That is viral nucleocapsid. So, what is this MXGTPases? So, this MX proteins. So, this is a mixovirus there. So, that's why it MX GTPases we know that which convert the GDP into the GDP in GTPases. So, GDP into the GDP, right? And then they can trap and degrade the viral particles by binding to how? So, this MX protein, which is a mixovirus resistance proteins, they are a family of this interferon induced dynamin like GTPases which converts this GDP into the GDP, GDP into the GDP. So these are the part of innate. We know that all the antiviral defense system they are the part of innate immune system. So what happen is when this type 1 interferon, that is interferon alpha beta, secreted, they stimulate the expression of this MX GDPases. Then these MX proteins oligomerize, they form the units, and after that they form the ring-like structures. These oligomers bind to the viral nucleocapsid. So after that, these MX protein oligomers, as in the question, they ask that these oligomerized MX TPases degrade the viral particles binding to this viral nucleocapsid. So they'll go and bind to this viral nucleocapsid. We know that which is this nucleocapsid. This is the protein shell surrounding this viral RNA DNA. So this is the outer covering, and here the where this nuclear material is present, and these are the protein shell which covers this viral RNA or DNA. We call it as nucleocapsid. So these oligomer will come and bind to this nucleocapsid. By binding, they trap and block the all the viral transcription and replication. In this way, they eliminate this viruses, right? Other option is viral RNA. Mostly MX protein mainly act against the RNA viruses, not with the DNA. So the viral DNA will not be the right answer. Viral RNA, they don't bind naked RNA. Only RNA inside the nucleocapsid they'll bind. None of the above. No, no, because we know that it will bind to the nucleocapsid, and that's how they block and this viral transcription and replication. So, moving to the next question, this type 1 hypersensitivity related to allergy is generally mediated by option A is IgE, option B is IgA, option C is both A and B, and option D is antigen antibody complex. So, here the type 1 hypersensitivity and which is related to allergy.
Option A.
Okay, anyone else?
Option A, ma'am.
Okay, so very good. You both are right. Option A is the right answer. We know that the only antibody mostly related to the allergy is this IgE. And these allergy related things mostly come under the type 1 hypersensitivity. We know that there are four kinds of hypersensitivity: type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. We'll see one by one, like what is the main differences between all the hypersensitivity. First, we'll see that the type 1 hypersensitivity also called as immediate hypersensitivity, because it's the very classical allergic reaction. And we know that for allergy, which antibody is famous? Or only this IgE antibody, because these are the antibody which mostly present on this basophil and mast cells, and we know that they only help. So these initial, whenever there is a exposure of allergen, it will activate this T helper 2 cells. After that, they'll bind and stimulate the B cells so that they can activate and convert this IgM class switch to IgE production, because there is an allergen. So allergy will be there, right? So during that allergy, this type 1 hypersensitivity, what they do is this IgE antibody bind to the FCE epsilon R1 receptors, which normally present on this mast cell and this basophil cells. Then there will be re-exposure of allergen, and this allergen cross links with the IgE, where after that, once these allergen cross link this IgE on these mast cells, there will be massive degranulation, and there will be a release of histamine, leukotrienes, prostaglandins, and we know that all these are the inflammatory, which help in the inflammation, right? Inflammatory agents. So histamine, leukotrienes, and prostaglandin. Once this cross-link with the IgE, after the re-exposure, there will be the massive granulation, and in this massive degranulation, what kind of granules will come out? Histamine, leukotrienes, and prostaglandin. All are the inflammatory agents which help in the vasodilation, bronchoconstrictions, itching, and swelling. IgA is not the right answer. We know that because mostly IgA is a colostrum. The first milk, during the first milk, it help. It's a secretory antibody normally present in there, and other than that, it also present in mucosal surfaces. So it is not linked to the allergy, right? So IgA is not the right answers, and both A and B will not be the right answer, because we know that IgA will not be the which help in the allergy, because it's a secretory antibody normally present mucosal surfaces to protect the mucosal surfaces and during the colostrum first milk of the. And after that, antigen antibody complex, we know that this antigen antibody complex, they'll mediate this type 3 hypersensitivity. We'll see how this type 3 hypersensitivity. So the only type 1 hypersensitivity is mediated by the which kind of antibody? This IgE, which is normally act with the receptors present on the mast cells and the basophils, and then they'll cause this allergy, right? So this is the type 1 hypersensitivity. This is the antigen, so it will bind to the APCs and it will convert this T helper cells, and then after that, these will they transform these plasma cells into the IgE type of antibody, and after that, this IgE will fix to the mast cell and basophils, and then there will be the massive degranulation. And these massive degranulations, they'll secrete the histamine, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and all, which are the inflammatory agents. They increase the inflammations. So this IgE involves in the type 1 hypersensitivity. Here we can see that how it will act. Allergen specific IgE, allergen will bind to this IgE, and these are the Fc receptor for IgE, and there will be the massive degranulation and it will cause this allergy. So mostly this type 1 hypersensitivity, it will cause this during the anaphylaxis, systemic anaphylaxis. Also, there is seasonal allergy if there is any pollen, or some people have some food allergies, right? And seasonal allergy like hay fevers, food allergies, and some have this shellfish, peanuts allergy. All these come under this type 1 hypersensitivity, which is caused by this IgE. And next is, we already discussed that there are four types. Then what are this type 2? In the question also, type 2 is there, which is also called as ADCC. As the name suggests, also AD, there is antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity. And normally these is mediated by this IgG mediated. So here the cells are destroyed by this bound antibody. Either they will activate the complement activation, right? Or they can be by this cytotoxic T cells with this FC receptors, and they'll form this ADCC, antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity. Mostly the red blood cells destroy by the complement and antibody during the trans. If the main example of this type 2 is erythroblastosis fetalis. If there is a mismatch of blood, if there will be transfusion of blood and there will be mismatch, then that blood antigen will act as and they'll bind, and where this IgG will play a role, and there will be complement activation and there will be antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity will be there. So these will come under this type 2 hypersensitivity. Then what is this type 3? This is the immune complex. Here this antigen antibody complex will be there, and mostly during the rheumatoid arthritis, like and the systemic lupus erythematosus, these are come under this type 3, where there is a play a role of neutrophil and there will be a complement activations, where the directly this neutrophils will also, because the first at first sight this neutrophil will come and there will be a complement activation and then antigen antibody complex will form. So these will come under this type 3. And type 4, in case of type 4, these th1 sensitize th1 cells, but before the sensitization this th1 cells, after the sensitization of, if there is an antigen, this antigen will bind to the receptor of th cells and there is a sensitization of this th1 cells. After the sensitization, what will happen is they'll release some cytokines, and these cytokines activates this macrophages, which is the antigen presenting cells, and also they will activate this cytotoxic T cells. And after that, they cause these activated and cytotoxic C cells. What they do is they accumulate the macrophages at the antigenic sites so that these can engulf this antigen and remove those antigens. And normally the example come under this type 4 hypersensitivities, dermatitis, autoimmune disease like diabetes mellitus, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, all will come under this type 4 hypersensitivity. So these are the four type of hypersensitivity. Type 1 is IgE dependent, where the allergies and all will come, IgE mediated. Type 2 is IgG mediated and cytotoxic hypersensitivity. Here the ADCC complex will be there, complement activation will be there. Then immune complex, that there is a free floating immune complex because of this complement activation, and here the neutrophil role will be there. So these is the type 3. And case of type 4, that is the cell mediated. Cell, here which kind of cells? This T helper cells, and they'll activate the which cells? This macrophages cells. So only this cell mediated, only the cells will be there, and it is a cell mediated. One cell mediate the other cells and then other cells, and then they'll cause this hypersensitivity. So mostly multiple sclerosis, diabetes, there will be a mismatch of the function of this immune system. So these are the main four types of hypersensitivity. Got it? So moving to the next question, degranulation. When there is a degranulation, there is a release of histamine. So in which case degranulation happens? Anyone? Type degranulation happens in the type 1 hypersensitivity, right? So they'll release the histamine and it is mediated by the efflux of which ions. So what will, which ion will be the efflux? Will remove out from the endoplasmic reticulum? Option A is calcium ions, option B is chloride ions, option C is fluoride ions, and option D is hydrogen ions.
Option A.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so you are right. Very good. Calcium ions. So what happen is this mast cell, and we know that this mast cell and basophil degranulation all come under the type 1 hypersensitivity, right? We know that this allergen cross-link with this IgE and will bind to the FCF cell and receptors on the mast cells, and after that signal will transduct and they will activate this phospholipase C. And once this phospholipase C, they'll generate the inositol triphosphate. And after that, this IP3 bind to the receptors on the endoplasmic reticulum. When this IP3 will bind to the endoplasmic reticulum, there will be a efflux of calcium ions, right? And these calcium ions from the endoplasmic reticulum, it will go to the cytoplasm. And after that, there will be intracellular calcium concentration. Because of this intracellular calcium concentration, now this calcium concentration will increase inside the cytoplasm. They will triggers the granules to remove out of the cells, and we call it process as exocytosis of granules. After this rise in this intracellular calcium concentration only, these granules will come out, and these granules, they will release then histamine, cytokines, proteases, and other mediators which help in producing these allergic symptoms. Chloride ions will not be the right answers because we know that chloride ions help in the membrane potential. Other than sodium, potassium, the other ions which help in the membrane potential is this chloride ions. Fluoride ions, no ways. We never heard about that it is physiological relevant. I we don't know so far ki if there will be fluoride ion in our body because fluorine is very reactive, right? So it can cause damage to our body. So there will be no fluoride ion which is a physiological relevant. Hydrogen ion, we know that, yeah. Hydrogen ion will be there. Mostly they help in the pH balance, not for the histamine release. So the only ions which help in the degranulation signaling, and we know that degranulation signaling help in the histamine release. These are the ions, that is calcium ions. So degranulation help in this calcium ions. Here not degranulation, here the membrane potential help in this chloride ions. And fluoride not physiological relevant, and hydrogen is relevant to the pH. So moving to the next question, this type 2 hypersensitivity is mediated by antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity, complement activation. Option C is both A and B, and option D is IgE.
Option D.
Option D, type 2 hypersensitivity. Read careful. Type 2. IgE is mediated by type 1, right? So the right answer is option C. It's okay. See, we saw in the type 1 is always IgE mediated. That is related to the allergy and all. Type 2 is related to means here the two things involved. One is this antibody dependent and another is complementation activation. So you can remember type 1 is very simple, IgE related, which is related to the histamine release and all. And we know that the first which cause the allergy, normal allergy and all. First will come to the normal processes, and normal processes is allergy and all. So all those food allergy and all this allergy come under this type 1. Type 2, 2 means two things are involving here. One is antibody dependent cytotoxicity and another is complementation activation. And type 3 is where the complement activation will help in through the neutrophil. So here the free floating complex. And type 4 is cell mediated. As the name suggests, cell mediated. Here the roles of the different cells will be there. That antigen will be there. It will bind to the T helper cells. Then there will be release of cytokines, and we know that cytokines can bind to different kind of cells, and then if it will activate different cells, and they'll then activate this kind of cells. So this is a cell mediated hypersensitivity. But in the question they mentioned that the type 2 hypersensitivity. As the 2 suggests, the two pathway will come and they'll play a role. One is this antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity, and it is complementation activation. So these type 2 hypersensitivity is mediated by this two pathways. Here we can see that the one pathway is ADCCs. This how it happens. So once this antibody will form, they'll infect this infect to the infected cells. This antibody will come and binds, and these NK cells also will come and they'll go to the process antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity. See, one of the main question is whenever it come ADCC, then there will be naturally their role of natural killer cells, because without the role of this NK cells, this will be the simple antibody killing, right? Not cellular cytotoxicity. Whenever there will be a term of ADCC, that will happens through this natural killer cells. So there is a role of this NK cells. So because of that, this ADCC process will happen and they'll infect this cell lysis. Another is opsonization will be happen and the complement activation will be there. Opsonization, this here are the different types of complementation activation. So these are the two different ways, that complementation activation and this ADCC. So this type 2 hypersensitivity is mediated by this ADCC, that is the role of this natural killer cells, and another one is this complementation activation. And the most common example is this grave disease. Here, what happen in our body, their antibody will produce, our body will produce the antibody excess amount, which will go and target this TCH receptors. If this TCH receptors they'll bind, so this antibody will go and they'll bind with this TSH receptors. Now the thyroid will not come and bind to this TSH receptors, right? So these even without the absence of this thyroid ligand, these are coming and binding and stimulating this cells. So these antibodies stimulate the receptor even without the ligand. So that's why we call it as grave disease. It is related to the over over increase of the thyroid hormones, right? Because these antibody are against this TSH receptor, they'll go and bind to the TSH receptor and they'll stimulate this thyroid epithelial cell so that they can, and we call it as hyperthyroidism also. That is a grave disease. So it will come under this type 2 hypersensitivity, right? Another example is Myasthenia gravis. It is a neuron related disease. What happen is there is an antibody of this ACH receptors. These ACH receptors antibody will go and bind to this ACH receptors and they'll release this acetylcholine and they'll inhibit the binding of this ligand to the receptor. Now this acetylcholine will not go and bind to this another receptors, and there will be no further signaling. So these are the Myasthenia gravis, right? So this, as in the previous slide already mentioned, this type 2 hypersensitivity, also called as ADC hypersensitive, because here is the antibody mediated ADCCC and also the complementation activation. It occurs when this IgG, here role of IgG will come, or we can say that IgM, they'll directly bind to the antigen present on the surface host cells. These bodies can damage through the two main pathways. One is complementation activation and another is antibody dependent cell mediated. Complementation activation, here the antibody bound to the cell surface and activate the classical complement pathway. As in the previous class, I mentioned how this classical complement pathway happens. They form this MAC complex, membrane attack complex, and they lyse the target cells. So these are the first way. Another way, they'll kill our body through this ADCC pathway. Here, the role of this natural killer cells. These are the very important cells which help in this ADCC process. They recognize this Fc portion of this IgG bound to the target cells. After that, they release this perforins, granzyme, and these will kill the antibody coated cells, like which is coated by this antibody. Only those cells will be killed by this NK cells and all. IgE, we know that no, this will not be the right answer, because IgE is related to the type 1 hypersensitivity, in which release of histamine will be there, role of basophil and eosinophil. will be there, right? Normally food allergy and all kind of allergy, eczema allergy, food allergy, pollen allergy, seasonal allergies, all will come under the type 1 hypersensitivity, not under the type 2. Type 2, like example we already saw, Misthemia gravis and this grave disease, in which there will be two pathway, as a two name suggests, two, that is complementation activation, and another one is antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity. So moving to the last question, serum sickness is related to which of the following hypersensitivity reaction? We know that there are four kinds, so we have to tell like ex- which hypersensitivity example of which hypersensitivity, like serum sickness come under which hypersensitivity? Either type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4.
Type 3.
Okay, so you are right. Very good. Type 1 will not be there, as we already discussed. All the allergies, simple allergies, food allergies will come. And type 2, we already saw Misthemia gravis and this. Another example is grave disease. So the type 3, here the serum sickness is a classical, very classic example of this type 3 hypersensitivity. So what happen is, when there is a foreign proteins like non-human antiserum, which is like if we know that if there is a snake biting of any snake, now we have to give anti snake venom. At time t0 there will be no issues, but with the time what happen is our body, some remnants of that non-human antiserum, they will act as a foreign proteins, and they'll used for the passive immunization. They'll enter the body, now they'll trigger our antibody production, and now this antibody binds with this foreign antigen and they'll form this antigen antibody complexes. Now this complexes circulates and deposit in tissues, this antigen and antibody. Once they'll deposit, they'll activate the complementation system, because our complement system will act like there is a foreign material also, but it's not, but it's a part of non-human anti-serum, because some proteins will be there which is like during the vaccination we do, but with time some of that will form the antigen antibody complexes. They circulates and deposit in the tissues. Now this deposited immune complex, they activate this complementation system. Like without any need, we don't need the activation of complement system. Still, this non-human antiserum, they are activating the complement system, and that will leads to the inflammation. And once the inflammation will be there, the first cells of the immune cells, that is neutrophil, will come recruitment, and there will be the tissue damage. So this is, we call it as serum sickness, and in that what we feel is fever, rashes, joint pain, lymphadenopathy, and the proteinuria. So these systematic serum sickness manifest throughout the body, and it can be induced by the older vaccines that used antibody from other species like horse, rabbit. Though very rare, like very rare will be there this process, but it can occur after the transfusion. Like anti-venom reactions can occur, like for example if anti-snake venom treatment is administered, so which is previously sensitized individual, so new anti-venom treatment avoid this reaction. So during the X time, at time zero, there is a zero plasma level. But with the time, slowly after a time, these plasma concentration is very low. And they will act as, and they'll form these complexes, and then there will these complexes will go and they act as a foreign material, so the other cells will come and attack those cells. And they'll cause this rashes, fever, joint pain, and all those. So these all will come under this type 3 hypersensitivity. So hairy, type 3, not type 2. Right, so this is wrong. Type 3 hypersensitivity. So these are the type 3 hypersensitivity, immune complex mediated, and this is IgG antibody antigen, serum sickness, systematic antibody from other species. Here the species will also be the different. We can't give 2 hours. We normally give to other species only, na, right? If a snake will be there, then we have to give antivenom from like older vaccines. Then the post transfusion, like one of the example is antivenom once at time T0, this foreign material is zero, and then with time it will increase, and then they'll form the antibody antigen complex, and this antibody against this foreign particles will form in our body. Initially the will come and down, and then if it will form these complexes and this antibody against will form this foreign particles, then this serum sickness symptoms will come, and this rashes, this joint pain, sorry, and then peripheral edema will be there, some liquid deposition will be there, and there will be swellings. Here we can see that this white color, right, and here in the skin white color because of the swelling and deposition of the liquid. We call it as peripheral edema, and fever also there. The uh, from the normal, the temperature of this will be the rise. Any doubt? Uh, Class is over, but it's okay. Any doubt? Okay then. Okay then. See you tomorrow in the next class. I'll re quick. Uh, uh, you joined very late, but it's okay. If you guys want, I can recap like tomorrow, but today for today's we are already done for like today's class. Then see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. sharp. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Sorry,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Good. Thank you.